Okay, the good thing about databases, if there is such a thing, is that the exam questions have been quite similar year on year. So once you get the process sort of nailed down, then it shouldn't really be a problem. So the first thing you've got to do is open up Access, and you're always going to click on Blank Desktop Database. It will then pop up and ask what you want to call the database. Don't be fooled into thinking this is where you click on the Browse button and try and find the data. This is just where you're going to save the database. So give it a sensible name, press Create. The first thing that I always recommend that you do is that you get rid of Table 1. The reason for that is because in a minute when you import some data from external data, there are two text file buttons. If you close Table 1, it stops you clicking on the wrong button. So go to external data, click on text file, click Browse, and then on the left hand side you'll be looking for, on your computer it will say this PC, but essentially you're looking for the department shared area. When you're in the real exam, it won't be such a long-winded process to find the files. We'll make sure that they're nice and handy for you. So this is the folder that we're using today. This is the question paper. Always check, don't dive straight in and go to number 1, always check what's written above. So you're now going to prepare some reports, make sure that all currency values are in pounds and set to 2 decimal places. Sometimes it'll be euros, sometimes it'll be dollars. So using a suitable database package, import the file N9book. So we double click on N9book, press OK, and it should then show you what the data looks like. Press Next. You must always, well, most of the time, tick this box. If it asks you to create field names, then you won't need to tick this box, but that's only ever happened once before. Just check the first row. If it has the field name already there, obviously tick that box. Press Next. On this screen, it's asking you to select the data types. So if we swap back to the question paper, it needs to be text, date, text. So text, date, and text. Don't worry about short text or long text, just leave that. The next one needs to be number, integer. If it's a number, just leave it. Don't change it from double or long integer or whatever it's selected. The only time you mess with a number is like on the next one when you need to swap it to currency. Otherwise you'll end up getting rid of your decimal places and it'll just cause you problems later on. So the next one needs to be number, then text, then boolean. So number we just leave, text, and the last one needs to be boolean. So boolean in Access is yes, no. So select yes, no and press Next. So when it asks you about a primary key, you need to have a look at the question. So it says here, let Access assign a key field called ID to this table. So if we go back, we've got 3 options. We've got let Access add a primary key, and obviously it calls it ID automatically, so we can just press Next. Press Finish. It'll just pop up saying, do you want to save your steps? Press Close, and then if you just double click on your file over here, you'll see that the data is imported correctly. If it says field 1, 2, 3 along the top, it's because you forgot to tick the box on the second screen. Delete the table and do it again. The other thing you now need to change is the -1s and 0s for the yeses and nos. If you right click on the tab for the table and go to Design View, click on the yes no, and in Format at the bottom you swap that to yes no. You can then close and save that table. Double click on it if you want to just check that that's worked correctly. So close that off, and then on this example we need to then import another file. So it says to import the file N9 staff as a new table in your database. Doesn't give us any data types this time, so we're going to have to sort of think about what they're likely to be, and then set staff ID as the key field. So again, we go to external data, click on text file. We can now click on this one, but hopefully you've already clicked on this one, so you'll remember this is the correct one. Click on Browse, N9 staff, and press OK. Always just press Next on this one. Again, we have the field names here, so we tick the box and press Next. Data types it didn't tell us, so if we just check that all these are text, which they are, and then this one's a date, so that seems fine. So on this one it said that we needed to choose a primary key and it needed to be staff ID. You can change that in the drop down box if it wasn't automatically selected. Click next and then finish, and then press close, and you will have your data imported over here. Okay, now as we've got two tables, we're obviously likely to have to link them together. If we have a look at the task sheet, it says create a one-to-many relationship link. Actually, before we do that, it's worth mentioning about the evidence. Take a screenshot showing the field names and data types. Don't print screen that view. That does not show the data types. You must right click on the tab, go into design view and show the data types like this. That's really important that you do that, otherwise it's you've done it all correctly, but you're going to lose a silly 4 or 5 marks just by not print screening the correct thing. So don't fall into that trap and make sure that you print screen in design view. So on the relationships then, it says create a one-to-many relationship link between staff ID in the staff table and the staff field in the N9 book table. So making sure that both of these are closed, go to database tools and then relationships. Double click on each one individually. If you double click on them more than once, you'll need to remove the table by right clicking on it and then press close. So if you do need to remove one, you can just right click and go to hide table. So it said that we needed to make a link from staff ID into this table on staff. Once this pops up, you need to tick this box which says enforce referential integrity, which will make it a one-to-many relationship, and press create. If you get an error message at this point, it's either because you haven't set staff ID as the primary key, or it could be that you have one of the tables open. If it says it's in use by somebody, that somebody is you. Right click on your table that's open and close it. Close the relationships and press save, and then we can move on to the next bit. Okay, so the next part of the task then is asking us to insert 3 records into the table. It's really easy to do. Just open up the book table, scroll all the way to the bottom and just type it in the blank row that appears at the bottom. So just type it in there. The ID will automatically put itself in for you. So I'm not going to show you how to do that because it's really simple. So task 5 in this case is to produce a report. Whenever you're asked to make a report, you're always going to have to make a query first, because it says shows only records where, week is 36, etc. So you've got to do a query first. It tends to be that the first few are to do with the query, and then the ones after that are to do with the report. So to make a query, you go to create and query design. At this point, you only need to add in the table that is being used for that query. So in this case it was an N9 book. I'll just resize that so we can see all of the data, all of the fields. We then need to figure out which fields we're going to include. So to do that, if we have a look at this, we're looking for the bullet point that says shows only the fields. So we need to show staff, date, booking and week. So staff, date, booking and week. We also need to put number, tour and income. Number, tour, and you'll notice that income isn't there. If we go back to the task sheet, that's because income is the new field that we're going to create. So we essentially haven't finished that one yet. So if we do this one next, then it means that we've done both of these bullet points. Okay, so to create the new field, it's going to be called income, and it's going to multiply the price by the number. So in the next column, it's going to make this column a little bit bigger in case we go over and we can't see it. You start off by typing in the new field followed by a colon. Make sure you don't miss any capital letters out, it's a daft mark to lose. All you do then is type in the calculation that it asked you to type in. So in this case it was price times number. Once you click out of that, it will put square brackets in for you. The only time you have to put square brackets in yourself is if the field name is 2 words with a space in between them. They haven't done that for a couple of years, so you shouldn't have to worry about square brackets at all. If we then click on run, we've now got our new field, which is income. We've got it set to two decimal places and pounds, so we haven't got to mess around with that. If we did need to sort that out, you just need to right click on the field and go to properties, which I'll show you how to do. So if we needed to change that, click in the field, open up the property sheet, and then in the format you've got euros if you needed to change it to euros. So the next part of the task then, if we say that we have now done those two, the next one is to show only records. So we only want to show it where the week is 36, and then there's something to do with the date and also the office's strand. So if we do week 36 and office strand, then we can do the date one after. So the week is going to be 36. If you're not sure if you've got to type week 36, try it. If nothing comes up, you know that there's a problem. Just type in 36. Always run it every time you type something in, so that if you get an error, you know where the error is. So the week's 36 and the office, which we haven't included, needs to be strand. So when this happens, double click on it to include it, type in what it is that we're searching for and run it to make sure that it works. So we've only got strand showing up. Then in design view, just untick the box, and then obviously it won't show up. It won't lose any marks for including fields we weren't asked to include. So we've got week 36, and we've also done that the office is strand. So we're left with the booking date was made between the 1st of April 2009 and the 30th of June 2009. So to do this, on the date, we need to type in between 01/04/09 and 30/06/09. Again, it will put hash symbols in, and it will capitalize things. Don't worry about that, just let it do its thing. Press run, and we've now only got dates on those specified months. So back into design view, we can now say that we've done that entire bullet point. Shows the data and the field names in full. That just means make sure your columns aren't too thin, and that is everything else that we need to do on the query. So everything else is about how it looks and calculations on the bottom of the report, so we can do that in the report wizard. So the only thing left to do is to save the query with a sensible name. Always look for the bit that says what the heading is going to be. So excuse me, our heading is week 36 for strand, and that needs to be at the top of the page. So if I copy that, you will have to type it in when you do it because it'll be on paper. But when we click on save, give it that name, press OK, and it just means that it'll automatically put that as the heading. What you then need to do is to create the report. So go to create and go to report wizard, and then at this point don't blindly click the double arrows and press next, because you've just lost all the marks that you've made in the query. The reason for that is because you had the table selected, not the query that we've just made. One way to avoid that is to either have this selected or even have it open before you click on report wizard. Blimey. Okay, so have that open before you click on report wizard, and then it will automatically only include those fields. Click next. At this point you may need to take out some grouping. So if we click on this back arrow, it takes out the staff grouping. Hopefully in the real exam that shouldn't be a problem, but it's always worth checking. Press next. It's asking us if we need to sort it. So if we find the one that talks about sorting, which I can't find, there we go, sorts the data into ascending order of date and then ascending order of staff. So we go to ascending order of date and ascending order of staff and press next. Has it got to be portrait or landscape? That's something we need to check. Let's just highlight the fact that we've done that bullet point. It needs to be portrait, so we can say we've done that one. So portrait and press next. Our heading is already correct, so we can press finish. So this is the sort of basic layout for the report. We need to make sure we do this one because at the moment we've got hash symbols that we've already seen. We'll check that the currency is correct, make sure it fits on a single page wide. We've got the heading at the top of the page now correct, so we can highlight that one as done. It's a calculation got to go at the bottom, and we've also got to put your name at the bottom. So if we sort of work down the list, the first one is to make sure that we've got all the data and the field names shown in full. Best way to do this is to right click on the tab and go into layout view, and then just move things around. So this column is obviously much bigger than we need it to be. To select more than one thing, you just hold control. If you're getting hash symbols, it just means that your column isn't wide enough. Always scroll up and down though, just to check that there aren't any longer items of data further down. So we can just move things across until everything's fitting on. Okay, so everything's now fitted to 1 page wide. To double check that, go into print preview. We can see everything looks nice. It's page 1 of 1. Everything fits. We shouldn't lose any silly marks for that. So then if we go into, notice also, sorry, that the currency is also correct. So if we go into design view, we'll just tick off those 2 things that we've done. Make sure that you do this as you're working through the exam. It just stops you making little missing things out, sorry. So calculates the total value of the income field and displays this at the end of the report under the income field values, and it needs to be formatted as currency. So you've got to do this one in design view. Now you've got 2 footers. You've got the page footer and the report footer. The page footer will appear at the bottom of every single page, whereas the report footer will just appear on the last page of the report. So if it's 10 pages long, the report footer will appear once on page 10, but the page footer will appear 10 times once at the bottom of every page. So the calculation always goes in the report footer. You're not going to want a calculation that's different on the bottom of every page. So logically it needs to go in this one anyway. But there are 2 very similar options at the top. We've got a text box and a label. For the calculation we need a text box, and it'll automatically come with its own label, so you'll know you've got the correct one. So in the right hand box, which is the text box, we need to type in the formula. So it's exactly the same as in Excel. Equals sum, open bracket, and we want to find out the sum of the income. So you type that in, go into print preview, check on the last page that it's worked, it looks correct. The only thing obviously we need to do is set it to currency, and we also need to put the label in, but essentially that looks about right. The other things you could be asked to do are to count things. So equals count of income, and what that would do is just count how many records that there are. So there's 28 records, and the only other one that's ever come up is average. Now for some reason it's AVG rather than average like it is in Excel, but that just works in the same way. So in this case it's sum. The label to the left of it needed to be total income, so you just type that in there. And we need to set this as currency, so right click, go to properties, which is right at the bottom, and in the format change that to currency. It'll automatically be 2 decimal places, but you can change that in there as well. So if we just double check that this is looking correct, which it is, it says it needs to be underneath this column. I mean, it is pretty much, but just to be on the safe side, you might want to move that across just slightly, just so there's no issues. So we've now done the calculation and we've got the label. So the last thing to do is to put your name on it. If you can't put your name on it, then the rest of this was a waste of time, because it would just go straight into the bin. So you need to be able to do this one. It needs to be at the bottom of the report, so it's going to be in the page footer. Don't type in one of these boxes, because this is a text box, not a label. You can delete that because it's not asked for page numbers or dates, so you can get rid of it if you need to. So click on label, put your name in and your numbers at the bottom. Check whether it needs to be on the left or the right. On the left, underneath the report. So again, don't sort of put it over here and think that's far enough left. Put it right on the left. Print preview. They can't argue then that isn't bottom left of the report. And that is everything done for this first one. Okay, so we can close all of those things off. The next task then is to make another report. If we, for this example, if we ignore the fact that it says report, perhaps it would say extract. For some reason this confuses a lot of you. An extract is just a query. So all you're going to need to do is make the query. And the reason for that is because normally they then want you to put that into maybe your newsletter or into your PowerPoint, or even into Excel and make a graph from it. So it's just a query. So for this one, it says it shows only the fields staff, date, booking, price and number. So if we go to create and then query design, add the table, resize it so we can see it. I've forgotten already what they were. So staff, date, booking, price and number. Staff, date, booking, price and number. Those are the ones that we've got to show. It needs to be week 35. So underneath week, which we don't have, so we will include it and type in 35 but not show it. Always run it to make sure that it works, which it does. Staff is AR and tour is yes. So staff AR, again run it, make sure it's correct. And the tour is yes. Again, we haven't got tour, so we need to double click on that and not show it, but say yes, and obviously run it to make sure it works. And also booking is this code here. So under booking, we'll type in that code. So if you press run, it looks about right. Obviously, we're just producing an extract in this one, but you know, this is all about if it was going to be a report. Everything else we've just done in the previous task, so I don't need to show that again. The only thing would be if we were to put this into a Word document, then what you'd need to do is run the query. You need to highlight the whole table. The easiest way to do that is to click on this box at the top, right mouse click, go to copy, and then whatever document you're putting it in, you simply paste it in. That's pretty much everything that you need to know for this task. The only other thing that might be worth mentioning, this isn't one of the tasks, is the symbols. So if we were looking for, let's just see what the prices are. So 195 is the lowest. So if we say we want to show prices over £200, we would do greater than 200. If it was greater than or including, it would be greater than or equals, and obviously then less than points to the left. So if you just remember less than left, don't worry about the maths crocodile open mouth towards the biggest stuff. It's difficult to do when you haven't got something written either side of the symbol. Just remember less than left. So that's less than or equals 200. We've already seen a between example. The only other thing is maybe we don't want to show week 36. Do less than greater than 36, and that will show everything but week 36. So less than greater than just means not equal to. And that's everything.